So they're going to go through. Here's again the don't worry, there's no null hypothesis. Anything you dislike about this is evidence that it's correct. Emotions, racial stress. By the way, racial stress is not a synonym for emotions, just to clarify, but I guess it is in this context. Emotions, racial stress, that are stirred when making white people consider racial realities. Again, they're acting as if these are realities. This is some kooky old rich lady's knapsack bullshit. All this is built on a kooky old rich white lady's knapsack couple page article. This is just, it might as well have been her writing down her dream. This is based on nothing. Nothing. They built an entire industry based on nothing. And they're calling it racial realities. All right, here's some things. Guilt, anger, apathy, frustration, closed-mindedness, defensiveness. In other words, I argue that gravity doesn't exist. And anything you say against my argument that gravity doesn't exist, are you angry about it? Are you frustrated that I'm saying gravity doesn't exist? Are you frustrated are you closed-minded to not accept that gravity doesn't exist? Are you defensive about the existence of gravity? Well, that proves my point. Gravity doesn't exist. That's what they're doing here. That is what they're doing. It's so childish, it should be obvious. Prevents us from having a racial dialogue. I mean, really. Blah, blah, blah. I mean,
they're not trying to have a racial dialogue. Yeah. Let's be clear.
Yeah.
They're not trying to have a dialogue at all, because any opinion that you have, any emotion that you have, anything you have that's not acceptance of this and proselytizing this and, converting to this, anything that you have to say is evidence of your white fragility and won't be allowed in this discussion. Thanks for playing. That's been our racial dialogue portion of, it's like, right. You are a racist. You can either say, yes, I am.
Or you can prove me by saying I'm not.
Or you can say that you're not, which is evidence that you are.
Yeah,
Thanks
you
for
can
playing.
prove it. Yeah. All right. So they go on. If this is just a long quote, I don't even feel like reading this.
Yeah, let's just say.
This is just more crap. What made you uncomfortable or excited? Whoever's getting excited by this, go see a therapist. All right. White privilege, guiding question. How do you think white privilege and culture is established and maintained? So, by the way, notice what they've done, by the way. And they just threw this out here and they didn't talk about it. Why is the word culture here? They made their crappy argument for white privilege. Now, granted, it's a crappy argument and it's totally a house of cards, but not even a house of cards. It's vaporware. It's an anti-truth. But culture? Because, by the way, these are the same people that believe that let's just do the distributive property of the word white. White culture. White culture. These are the people that say white culture is showing up on time, reason, logic, evidence, success, anything good in society. They categorize. I'm not categorizing this. This is not my view. Their view is that is white culture. So they've just thrown white culture in with this crap concept, white privilege.
I want to point out something that's even more, I hope is even more obvious here than what they just did by inserting culture in there. This question, this is a fallacy. This is called begging the question, where you build a premise into the question itself. And you are forcing people to accept the premise that's in the question itself. You're hiding a premise in the question. So they're not asking you, do you think white privilege exists, or what do you think is a good argument for the existence of white privilege or against the existence of white privilege? They are assuming that we all agree. They are in fact forcing you to agree that white privilege is a thing, because they're saying, how do you think white privilege and culture is established and maintained? It's just like the classic example of begging the question, when did you stop beating your wife?
Yep. It's a Kafka
It's
trap.
Assumed.
Yeah.
It's assumed in the question itself. And this is manipulation. This is deceit. If I were in a workshop where they're forcing me to accept a concept in the question itself, it's like, this is a question I would say NA, not applicable. How do you think white privilege and culture is established and maintained? NA, I don't believe in white privilege.
Right. And by the way, I really want to point this out. Even if you believed in white privilege, which we already debunked, I'm going to use their words against them. We debunked it. Remove that part from the sentence here. How do you think white culture is established and maintained? Well, white culture is established and maintained by having a majority white population, just like Japanese culture is established and maintained by having mostly Japanese people in your country. Go to Japan as a white person. I spent a lot of time in Japan. Guess what doesn't exist in Japan? White culture. It's Japanese culture. There is no white culture to speak of. I mean, I guess in Roppongi there's some drunk expats. But, white culture is what happens when you have white people. Now, their definition of white culture, though, is actually different than that. Their definition of white culture is what they mean when they say white culture is all things good about Western culture. That's what they mean, which is insulting to anyone who's not white, because it implies that if you're not white, you can't be a part of Western culture, which is actually foundationally at odds with the principles behind Western culture. And no one who supports Western culture believes that. So, all right. Talk about erasing existence. They're erasing the existence of successful non-white people in Western culture by doing this.
I just saw this scroll by and I just want to read it. It's a super chat. I'll just read it out of order. B. Allen gave us a super chat.
Oh, I saw that one. I was going to read it, but I was going to wait for the super chats. Okay, go ahead.
B. Allen says, Carrie's not very punctual. Does that mean she identifies as Black? Well, here's what I'd say. That I identify as Southern. Thank you very much. And also, I am a marginalized person because I have a time blindness, which puts me in a special category of people that deserve certain allowances and more voice in the conversation.
And I appreciate showing up on time, which puts me in a separate category of people who get triggered when there's time blindness around me. So I don't know where we are on the hierarchy. Okay. Let's all right. Since white people in America hold most of their political, institutional, and economic power, they receive advantages that non-white groups do not. Again, it's not advantages, right? This is them flipping it and saying, the right way to address any sort of racial disparities here is to say the standard should be the same for everyone. And if there are people that are being mistreated, we should identify the mistreatment and root it out. But this is saying it's not that people are mistreated. It's that whites aren't mistreated. This is flipping it on its head. They have this advantage that the standard is. So if you think about this, where do they even say this? I think their customs, culture, beliefs, white culture and white radicalized identity refer to the way that white people, their customs, culture, and beliefs operate as a standard, right, by which all other groups are compared. Well, that's just because that's majority privilege in Japan. It's the Japanese culture. Where's the one I'm thinking about? Here we go. This last bullet here. Persons who identify as white rarely have to think about their racial identity because they live within a culture where whiteness has been normalized. Now, oops, sorry about that. Where whiteness has been normalized. Oh, that was Carrie. That was Carrie just texting me, telling me she'll be back. She's gone for a minute, but she'll be back. Persons who identify as white rarely have to think about their racial identity because they have lived within a culture where whiteness has been normalized. Now, this is a way. This is a way to. Whoops. Sorry, guys. I got a screen problem here. Ugh, all right. I don't know what's going on with my other screen. It died. Okay, here we go. Back. This is a way. This is a way where they force people to identify. So they're saying that privilege means to not have to think about your race. So think about what kind of standard that sets. If privilege means not having to think about your racial identity, then that means the standard is having to think about your racial identity. So what they want is for everyone to have to think about their standard as an identity, or their racial identity as a standard. That's what they want. So this is kind of the definition of racial division. I know I'm nitpicking about this word privilege, but it's important to see how they set the tone here. They're saying not having to think about your racial identity is a privilege. Whereas a normal person would say, not having to think about your racial identity should be the way that everyone is. It's not a privilege, it's the standard. And if you do have to think about it a lot, that's an aberration. That's the problem. That's what should be corrected. You should not have to think about it. But that's the opposite of what they're saying. They're saying that you don't have to think about your racial identity. That needs to be corrected. That's the privilege you need to get rid of. You must start thinking about your racial identity. These are the same people running around talking about how divisive Trump is. That is the definition of dividing people by race. That's exactly what they're doing. As I said before, they would be talking about the disadvantage of blacks or the disadvantage of Latinos if they were trying to have a society that was not racist. That's not what they want. They're not talking about those things as disadvantages. They are saying, they're not talking about like certain people have to deal with disadvantages. They're saying white people have a privilege. And there's a big difference between those two. It sounds like semantics, but remember, these are magic words and magic words matter. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. White people can possess other marginalized parts of their identity, but their race is not one of those. So again, this is like, don't think that the postmodernism applies to race. That's what this means to people who are going to start questioning and say, I identify as blah, 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 blah. Nope. You can't do it. You can't identify as black. Being white does not mean you have to experience hardship or oppression. They've had to include this because people push back on like, hey, I had to experience some hardship.
This is basically the attempt to create a science, something akin to a science out of racism.
It's a pseudoscience. It's a pretend
pseudoscience. It's a pretend science, but they're trying to create a science out of racism. You know, white people are this way, black people are this way, Latino people are this way. I view it as no different from the attempts to use pseudoscience back in the day to claim that white people were superior, that black people were inferior. It's the same sort of thing. It's just morphed. Yep.
So then they have a discussion again with a loaded question. How do you think what privilege and culture is established and maintained? We've talked about that. And then they're going to go, okay, so then they're going to go show us some facts. Now, interestingly, they took these facts from 2016 to 2017 for reasons that support their cause. The 10 richest Americans are 100% white. Okay, that's true, I guess, if Sergey Brin and Larry Page are 100% white. I don't know if one of them is. They're not. They are immigrants. I mean, some of them are immigrants, but I don't know. I don't know if they count as white. I guess they are. Okay. U.S. Congress is white. Governors are white. Top military advisors are white. President and vice president are 100% white. Now, of course, if they had looked at this, a couple years before, 4 years before that, they would have said president is 100% black. But so they list all these things that have lots of white people in them. Okay, so this is our privilege apparently because we live in a society that's mostly white. Teachers, full-time professors, people who decide stuff on TV, white. Now, by the way, these are all white leftists, but okay. Robin DiAngelo falls into here. Which books we read, that Robin DiAngelo falls into there. Or as I aptly called her earlier, what's her name? Okay. And then here's some examples. They go through some examples of white privilege. I don't even believe some of these examples. I looked at some of these examples and first of all, I can expect my children or children I know to get a good education. I don't know what they're thinking. They're just claiming that public schools with white students do better. That doesn't mean you can expect them to get a good education. But there's some of them who are just crazy. Like, when I go to the doctor, I don't worry I will be treated differently because of my skin color. And they say that 67% of doctors have a bias against black people. And I was shocked by this. I was like, that can't even be true. That can't even be true. I don't, like, how can that be true? I tried to look up a study. They got to be citing something. This is the number. They're at least pretending, just like a kid pretends with, Fisher Price hammers that he has a toolbox. They've got to pretend. They got to be pretending. This got to come from somewhere. I found like really bad studies that maybe suggested some bias, but they were all based on this. They were all based on this implicit bias association test, which even Vox, the far left Vox, is saying, actually, it doesn't work. It's bullshit. It's literally their entire world is based on pseudoscience. Their entire world is pseudoscience. All of it. It's just pseudoscience. Sorry, I'm pissed off.
The implicit association test is not, they can't replicate it. It's not a test where they can replicate the same results. And even at least one of the founders has come out against it and said that it doesn't work.
Yeah. And the one paper I saw that supported this doctor thing used the implicit association test, and there was like a mild association with a bunch of doctors. And so they're like, 67%. I mean, all right. Like, if crap is your input, crap is your output, right? There's a computer science term called garbage in, garbage out phrase, garbage in, garbage out, right? Well, if you start with pseudoscience and a bunch of crap, then you can have a bunch of crap with numbers on it. Okay, that's what you get out. So here's just more examples. Who our friends will be, how healthy we'll be, how much money we earn, what school we attend. All this is quote privilege.
Are there any other slides in here that you definitely want to hit?
I was going to say, I'd rather kind of be done. And then they're just kind of done.
Yeah, it's just more of the same.
Yeah, it's more crap.
And I have hit my limit with it. So
Good, me too.